All right, everyone, it is interview time, and we are here with repeat guests, Fabienne Annick and Fabienne. Did I say that right? Annick?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, I did it. Our last guest, she's Kate Lorray. I kept calling her Lori like it was her first name. Anyways, and her last name is not even Lori. So, and Fabienne, we know personally, so she's a dear friend of ours, and she's also a repeat guest on a very popular episode that was about semen retention and sexual mastery. And Fabienne does a lot of work with penis owning individuals, and you will discover more about that work. And you heard a little bit in the bio that we read before this. This one will focus more on sexual confidence for penis owning folks, also maybe how to have full body orgasms, and how to show up as maybe a more present, more enticing, amazing, incredible lover. But before we go into all those juicy pieces, Fabienne, even though you've been on our show before, can you please tell our listeners how you got to where you are today in the field of sexuality?
Yeah, absolutely. It started, when I remember being like 11 and being like, I'm going to be a sex therapist when I grew up. I had my own unfortunate, but also beautiful journey with understanding what the potential of sexual trauma and issues can look like when I was a child. But my parents were extremely, extremely supportive of me in my sort of healing and integration as a young person. And so I understood from very early on, like there's this thing that is so intense and so powerful and seems to be sort of pointing everybody, or like seems to be like the compass for just about everything in this world. And then there's also this potential for trauma, and there's also this potential for beauty. So from a pretty early age, I was drawn to the world of sexuality. And then later on in life, I was finding that in my loverships, it was like my natural instinct was like, well, how can I help you love yourself more? Or it just sort of felt like a natural part of my sexual journey. But then I felt like, okay, this feels like a piece of my purpose, piece of my my personal meaning in this world, and yet I don't want to just have sex with everybody who I'm like want to love themselves.
That's not what you're doing.
That would take a lot longer.
Yeah.
Well. That might take a long time.
For real. Yeah. A lot of work, a lot of lube. Yeah. It would take some time.
Yeah. Lube. Okay. Anyway.
And then I actually started working with women for years, doing sexual trauma work, doing massage work and coaching with women. And then more and more was pointed back to working with men and cock-bearing people, and just seeing how little there is for men in the realm of sex and sexual expansion and mastery and growth and exploration, and how helpful it is for all of us when we're all sort of doing this work together. And I saw that in the realm of that, there were men supporting men, and not a whole lot of women. There definitely are some amazing women supporting men, but it felt like, okay, this is where A, it's natural for me, and B, it's needed.
Oh yeah. And you're really great at what you do. And we're so happy to see you again, even though it's not in person. I'm excited to talk about this full-bodied orgasm piece, because I know folks out there, especially if they are owning a penis, they're like, did I ever have a full-body orgasm? But
what's a full-body orgasm?
Yeah. What is that? Where I'm like gyrating. So we'll get to that.
We'll get there, everyone. Don't worry.
Also, but quick side note on penis owning. I had this funny thought just a few days ago where I'm like, you can own a penis without necessarily having it on your body. So I've been like cock bearing. I've been like trying to think of all the different words.
I like that. Yeah, I heard you say that, and I was like, that's a newer one too. I like that, like a cock bearer. But I guess you can still bear a cock. It could be silicone too. So I mean, exactly. No perfect way to talk about people who have penises.
You don't know what we're talking about.
It's always this language is fluid as well, and it's evolving all the time. And I think, based on what I've heard out there from the education world, the sex educator world, that it will probably change this vulva owning, penis owning piece. But right now, that is what feels good for most folks. So we'll take notes when that shifts. But cock bearers out there, listen up.
Reminds me of like a ring bearer at a wedding, though, and they're like, dun, 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 dun.
They're presenting the cock.
Use your silicone dick. I know you still use it though.
So yeah, I like it. So, okay, but we're going to get to the full-bodied orgasm piece first, I'm going to ask you about men in relationships. I'm just going to say men, okay? However you identify. Why is this confidence piece, the way they hold themselves in their relationship, why is it important to embody confidence?
Yeah. Well, I would say this in relationship, but also in dating and also in the bedroom in general. You know, we can teach you all the tips, all the tricks, all the ideas, all the positions. And it really won't make a difference if you're still holding yourself in the same way that you were, right? If you're wanting to make changes, learning the tips and tricks don't really make the shift. It's so much more about where it's coming from deeper down, right? The way that you're holding yourself, the way that you're actually expressing those techniques or those tips and tricks, right? So if you learn some new technique and you try it out on somebody, but you're coming from this place of sort of feeling unsure, they're going to feel that through your touch, and that's what they're going to respond to. It's not the actual like way that you're stroking the clitoris as much as it is like the energy behind it, right? It's like the whole feeling behind it. It's so much more based on the state that you've gotten yourself into, which comes from a whole variety of things, but it's like the way that you masturbate, right? The way that you look at your emotions, the way that you breathe, how centered and grounded you feel within yourself. So it's in order to actually make shifts in the way that you're sexually expressing, it's got to be a combination of finding your own comfort with it, finding your own confidence, developing your own practice to get into this sort of experience of yourself as a sexually powerful or confident being. And then also understanding what your partner likes or might like, right? Understanding tips and tricks and tools and techniques, and then sort of combining those things. So it's this naturalness. And then from there, from your confidence, from your naturalness, from your centeredness, and from your honest, real personality, right? Then being able to do the things that they might like, or surprising new positions or whatever it is. So it's like finding that honest, real, unbridled expression. And then it's almost like channeling that expression into the tips and the tricks and the things that your lover might like, right? Mm-hmm. So that you're actually coming with your full true self.
I think about it like when people are really confident with a Rubik's Cube and they show up and they're like, yo, I got this. Yeah. Because I feel like sexuality in so many ways, because there's so many different experiences with different bodies and everything is always changing and shifting. So it is kind of solving a Rubik's Cube. And those people that go in confidently and they're like, oh, I got this. And then they find different ways to master it faster. And I don't know if that resonates with you, Fabienne, but to me, I'm like, oh, wow, that's badass. And our bodies are like Rubik's cubes that are shifting all the time. So that's what I think of confidence going in with like,
Rubik's
I got this. I kind of know about this Rubik's cube.
I was thinking also because we're in the process of writing our book, and Midori has been a past guest, and she was talking about the Queen's Walk. I don't know if you remember this, April, but the Queen's Walk is what she says. So she invites people, and this isn't just for queens. It's just like what she teaches a lot of femdom stuff, but this is for anyone, for dominance in general. But like power, confidence. She says, get in your most like slouchy, shoulders forward, let your neck, everything just all droopy. And then like put those shoulders up, put your chest forward, like really like put your head on top of your spine, take a deep breath, and then move from there. But that's just one tiny piece, because we're not talking just about stature here when we're talking about confidence. It's not just the way we look at, it's the way that people show up. So let's talk about this piece here. Sexual confidence. How does this show up and enhance the way lovers can tend to their lovers, specifically speaking to penis owners, and how they can maybe tend to the pussy lovers?
Yeah, I mean, sexual confidence for me, it's so much about knowing oneself sexually and being willing to shift and adjust based on the current moment. When we don't have sexual confidence, oftentimes we're like trying to think of all the things that we're supposed to be doing. We're trying to like remember this porn that we saw, and we like thought that the person looked like she was enjoying it. And so you're right. It's like we're up here instead of in the body. And it's this like, there's less of an attunement to the present moment. Whereas with confidence, not only is it this like embodied listening to what's happening, but it's also listening to what's needed. Like, is a little bit more pressure needed? Is a little bit more forcefulness? Is more gentleness needed? And it involves and requires a lot more of that attuned listening. And also, when you're confident, it's going to be a lot easier to take feedback, right? If your lover says a little more of this or a little less of this in whatever way, shape, or form that they choose to express it, right? Maybe that's verbally, maybe it's not. When there's more confidence, it's this ability to meet that and flow with it instead of totally shut down and be like, fuck, I did something wrong, which is also completely understandable, but it really helps in sex when there's this confidence to move with whatever's most alive. And then also to just, when you feel someone holding themselves in confidence with this, like, I've practiced this, I've trained for this, I know what I'm doing. I also am willing to say that when I don't know what I'm doing, there's such a trust in that. And there's something like very palpable in that.
And sexy too. I'm like, oh yeah, someone not, and we're not just talking about skill, but like I also can say when I am kind of falling out of my presence, or I can advocate for myself. I'm not like perfect, and I'm like, okay, great. You've done, you've studied, you've researched, you've practiced, and I can rely on you to hold your boundaries, and also there's a safety for me to have mine too. I'm like, that's just hot in my opinion.
Exactly.
So is practice what it takes? And is it a practice of different techniques? Because you have these techniques, but it's also checking in with the person and patience from an acceptance from the person that is you're in partnership with or this experience with has to have an open mind to know that, hey, you might not know my body because I know my body, and I'm going to work with you so we can slide in and figure out. But I guess going in with confidence is the piece that would make it more important rather than being confused. So what do you think about that? Is it like a 2-way, 3-way, 4-way street? 5-way orgy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does depend on so many aspects, but in essence, it is about practice, right? But it's also self-exploration. It's like practice, yes, physical training practice, but it's also the practice of getting to know yourself, of finding your insecurities and taking care of them, of witnessing the different parts of yourself and becoming more conscious and aware, and learning to take care of yourself. And then from there, being able to build the confidence, if that makes sense. So it's sort of this like taking care of the parts that don't feel confident internally, going through your own inner work, and then the practice of training. So when, for example, if I have a client who, let's say, ejaculates much more quickly than they would like, then the first thing that we'll do is really looking at, okay, well, let's see where the shame is. Let's see where the story is. Let's see where you're getting in your head and all of these pieces. And then from there, we'll train, right? We'll train physiologically, we'll train your body to be able to last longer. So it's sort of a combination of like the inner shadowy work and then like the actual physical training.
Well, yeah, I think it's all, there's never a switch, right? It's always the layers and the pieces. So why do so many men feel like they need to push their sexuality down, maybe for safety reasons or various reasons, whether it's the world today or too much porn watching where they are like, I can't perform like that. But why do you believe that they do push their sexuality down?
Yeah, it kind of seems like there's this side of like people that being afraid of being too much like,
or not enough.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I have to be like the nice guy or like the safe guy. Because if I am too confident to go too far, then it's
my ego, then I'm going to be an asshole.
Yeah. Or rapey.
Totally.
Sorry,
Yeah.
brought that in. But that's like, I know that's a fear for people though, like that, embodying that. So
absolutely. No. And this is something that I see as one of the main issues right now, especially in the world of men's sexuality, is this like pushing down of sexual expression, of sexual power based on the desire to be safe. And I mean, you just named a couple of the reasons, right? We live in this environment where there's not a lot of, there's quite a bit of talk on the problematic issues of male sexuality with not a lot of examples of healthy male sexuality.
Totally.
And so it's a really important piece to the healing of sexuality as humans. So with like cancel culture and the Me Too movement, you see like it's so understandable. And then at the same time, it's creating a lot of a lot of guys who want to be good guys, who are good guys, or want to be safe and perceived as safe, then are sort of like, well, I don't know what to do other than just kind of repress my sexuality, repress my sexual confidence, my sexual aggression, all of these really natural and also really sexy qualities, right? And it's, it can be the sort of societal reasons. It can also be responses to unhealthy examples that that they've seen, right? An unhealthy model of anger, of right, maybe they saw anger in a way that caused harm for their entire life, and they're like, hell no, I will never be like that. So then you repress it, right? Including the healthy versions. Or maybe you yourself have hurt somebody, and it's like, I'll never be unsafe again. And so then there's the guilt and the shame and the remorse, and then that sort of covers up the healthy, again, the like healthy primal sexual instincts. And then you add in like, all of the unhealthy foods, the technology, the plastic, all of this stuff that's just making testosterone also go down. And it's just sort of like a perfect storm for
big old mess.
Yeah, a big old mess. Yeah.
Big old confusing mess. Yeah.
Totally.
I have talked to a number of people, so I'm speaking for, so we're talking about, women or female identified folks who are in relationships with male identified folks, and they want their man to be more dominant, more confident. And he's having a hard time embodying that because I'm a lover. I'm not a fighter. I don't want to hurt you. And so my question around that is, so how can, so for penis owning folks or male identified folks, how can they find their sexual power in a safe way? Like, what can they do to uncover these parts of their sexuality that they've been burying? And then how can they maybe integrate it into their being as they are now? Totally.
Yeah. It's such a good question. I think it's funny because like you're saying, I think so many, I'll say women right now, but so many people in general, we want more of that rawness, of that primal, of that sort of healthy aggression. But then of course we also sometimes have our own triggers around it. But then at the same time, we want examples of it, and we want to feel that healthy aggression. And the interesting thing is that the safest guy is actually the one with an integrated sexuality, an integrated aggression. So I think there are a few pieces here that are really, really helpful. And one is, again, doing like shadow integration work, looking at the parts of you that you've pushed down, that at some point you were like, I've got to put this away, and doing your own sort of inner journey with that, whether that is like with your therapist or doing EFT, whether that's by yourself or with a practitioner.
What is EFT again?
EFT is the emotional freedom technique, the tapping.
Oh, the
technique.
Tapping. Okay. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And that's a specific tool that I use with my clients, and that I've found to be particularly helpful when done with a good practitioner. I also think creating safe containers for this expression, for anger, for rage, for aggression, for sort of primal rawness, creating these containers for this to be expressed through the body without inflicting harm, right? So allowing your body to move it, finding those healthy expressions. So maybe it's in your room with a bunch of pillows and you're like beating and fucking and screaming and just letting it express inside of a safe container, inside of a container where you're not hurting anybody. And what I recommend doing is doing that, where you're just releasing, and then doing it again and being in the full expression, but staying connected to your presence, staying connected to your heart, so that you can start to experience what it's like to be in this full expression, but then also really safe, right? In the safety of presence and love. So creating safe containers, doing the internal sort of shadow integration work. I'm a personal fan of mirror work, right? Like accessing that in front of the mirror and spending time with yourself in it. And then another piece that I will mention is, it's so beautiful to be able to do this on your own, but lovership is also such a place where we can go into this. And when you are with a lover and you can again create that safe container for that expression, something so healing happens. And I've seen this firsthand, right? Where if, let's say, in a heterosexual relationship with a man who's expressing his rage, anger, aggression, and a woman, and I'm using this as an example because I'll use sort of my own relationship as an example here. When he is completely received in that full expression of rage or aggression by complete acceptance and love, right? Again, this is if he's doing this in a non-harmful way and in a way that's not blaming the other person or physically harming without consent. It creates, when you have this full expression of rage or shame or whatever it is, and you look up and you see the eyes of somebody unconditionally love or fully loving you in that moment, something really, really deep happens in the system. And we can do all the inner work that can get us so far, but there is something about meeting somebody in this space and healing it together and creating a space for it's safe for you to feel this, and I still love you, and I'm actually turned the fuck on by this. So there's also so much to be done in lovership, in partnership.
It reminds me of people who are really quiet when they orgasm. I mean, this is all bodies and bits and genders who have been trained to like not make their neck sounds like, oh, that's the orgasm. And then, and I've had partners where I'm like, just fucking roar, like let it out. I don't share walls with anyone here. And when they experience that they can actually just let go. Or also when I've been invited to do that, to just like wail or roar or like crygasms or like I need to press pause because I'm having a process or, whatever, all these things. And then you met with someone who's like, it's all good. Bring it. Like, I love this wildness of you. I found it to be really healing. And I think I've seen it be really healing for other people too.
Yeah, 100%.
I feel okay, sorry. I don't want to interrupt you. You please continue that thought because I have something I want to add to that after you're finished.
I was just going to say that something that my partner says is he says, passion is harmonized rage. And of course, maybe not in every situation, but in certain situations, it's like that. When you harmonize it, when you bring it into integrity, then it turns into this incredible passion that's so sexy.
I love your partner.
Yeah.
I never met your partner, but I love your partner.
You should trademark that. So what I've found, and I've been surrounded by dudes my whole life. I grew up with an older brother and I have always had a lot of dude friends. I call men dudes all the time. I call my mom dude sometimes as well. So bear with me, but
you're both kind of dudes.
What I found is that for a lot of folks, like the rage sometimes isn't as hard because it shows they're masculine where they're like, oh, I'm gonna fucking, right? And I'm not saying out there beating people up. However, I feel like getting in tune with their sadness when they can let out, because that for some people, it had my brother, he doesn't listen, so I can say this and it's fine. But he is, every time he cries in front of me, he's like, I'm sorry. I don't want you to see me like this. It's so weak. And I'm like, no, dude, I'm like, you're human and you have to let those things out. And my dad too has cried and he never cries. So it's this really interesting, I think, and maybe that's a Midwest thing, right? We're all from the Midwest, but from what I've experienced, even men that I've been in relationship with have the rage hasn't been as difficult to express. I feel like the sadness and that shame is harder. And I don't know if you've experienced that as well, but maybe it's all tied together. But what do you think about that?
I completely agree. I find that the sadness and the sort of like grief, and then also the aggression, specifically sexual aggression. So this is something I see with a lot of my clients where they can do the like beating the pillow, but then when it comes to fucking the shit out of something, particularly if they're like being witnessed, I mean, it's like no, because I've hurt people, or there's a different quality to that sexual aggression. And so I find that piece, and then the sadness and the grief. And I actually oftentimes also encourage my clients to like self-pleasure and just like act out grief, even if it's not coming naturally, just like bring that expression in and like it brings so much sexual power when you have the capacity to bring all emotions, because you can't shut down one thing without slightly dimming down everything else.
You're all connected.
Bringing it all online is like the most sexually powerful thing that you can do, I think.
It reminds me of I won't use names or anything, but April and I were having a cocktail with someone that we knew, and a dude we knew, and we thought he's always been a great guy. And we have a tendency, you probably do too, to bring up conversations around sexuality and childhood wounding
unintentionally.
It just comes up, but not everyone wants to enter it. But this person that we really already appreciated and liked just opened up so deeply about a whole bunch of their childhood hurt and pain and trauma. And for us, and we were not about to have sex with this person. Like, this is a friend. But for us, we're like, oh my God, we just fell in love with you even more. Thank you. It's an honor to receive. And he wasn't crying, he wasn't showing rage. He was just sharing information. It was very deep. And it just, for us, we're like, you're a friend, and now you like kind of went up a notch, and now we feel even closer to you. And, and thank you so much. I think April was crying, actually. She may have had some tears. Yeah. Because it was, it is beautiful to see a man, a penis owning straight man who's like, I'm going to share these really heavy parts of myself just openly with y'all. And we're like, wow, this is, I can feel my heart is now.
And part of the practice though is if you are receiving this information, part of the practice, if you are listening to someone, isn't to try to fix them. I always compliment them for sharing such a vulnerable piece about themselves. And I don't do any fixing like, well, now what are you going to do about that?
How about some therapy?
Right. So it's, if you are bearing witness to someone and they are sharing this deep part of themselves, just listen. And I always just give gratitude. And I think that's the most powerful. And I said, thank you. And then I started crying.
She was like, thank you so much. Just crying. Just like, and then I messaged him later that day. I was like, well, I officially love you now. And and I loved him, but like, I'm like, okay, you're like, you're hold a place in my heart, because now I know who you are, right? Like the presentation that we can give, this kind of not like superficial, but when we get to know, and it's not like we April and I tell the world about our trauma because we have shameless sex, but I'm not saying go like tell everyone about all these things, but I think especially in loverships too, when you share those deeper parts of yourself, a lot can happen there as long as the other person can hold that. The hope is that they can, and you don't get shamed for it. Now, if you do, that's a whole different thing. We have podcasts for that. So,
and people like Fabienne
to work with. So go high, and we'll talk about how you can go work with Fabienne. So
we haven't talked about sorry, Fabienne, I keep interrupting you. I hate that. I get so excited.
It's Zoom.
The last thing that I was going to say about that piece is just that exactly what you're saying is there's this like, when someone is in their expression, whether that is rageful or sad or just talking about something really vulnerable, there's something so empowering usually to them when they are not only just listened to, but also like, thank you so much for being vulnerable, or like, or I am so grateful for your openness, or I'm really impressed by how, your self-awareness or your ability to hold yourself in this. And there's something so empowering in receiving that kind of feedback. And it actually like encourages more of it in a really vulnerable and, again, like pretty sexy way oftentimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now is the time to just free yourself for those things. Today is the day. Today, finally. And I'm one time only. Get it now while it's hot. So we're going to talk about full-bodied orgasms right now, because it's a really exciting topic about just in general about how penis owners can even have those or how they can get there. So full-bodied orgasms. What are your top tips on how penis owners can learn how to have more full-bodied orgasms now?
Laughter's the first key. Okay.
Yeah, honestly, the first key. It does encourage neuroplasticity. Highly recommend laughing as much as possible, especially when you're training your psyche and your body to do different things.
We're doing it right over here. Cool.
Yeah. So straight up. So with, I'll speak to full-bodied orgasms and semen retention. We talked a lot about semen retention and why to do that. And there are so many different reasons why to do that. And full-bodied orgasms is one of the sort of cousins of semen retention. And by that, I mean, they oftentimes intermingle, right? Which, cousins maybe isn't the right term for those who do intermingle. But,
third cousins.
Some people are still hanging out with their cousins in close ways. It's okay, no judgment.
What about step? There's step.
There we go. Yeah. I don't know. We'll get there. But essentially, full body orgasms, sexual or semen retention, it can be a way to just be able to last longer, to have sort of more motivation and inner power, but also it opens up these doors for different kinds of orgasmic experiences. And I've definitely heard a lot of guys who are in partnership with women say like, oh, I wish I could have an orgasm like her. I wish I could, she just goes off for like 5-10 minutes. I wish I could. I'm like, you can, but first you're going to have to do a little bit of training. Probably for some people, it's super, super natural. But with the full-bodied orgasms, one of the main ways of being able to access that is Well, I'll sort of there are sort of two categories here. And one is like general things that you can do in sex to sort of expand your orgasmic experience. And then the other is to like actually train for non-ejaculatory or full-bodied orgasms. So in general, to sort of expand towards that, I would say like breathe, relax, and express yourself. So like deep belly breaths where you're like really breathing all the way into the belly, breathing up through the body, through the fingers and the toes. Really what you can visualize is spreading the sexual energy from your cock, from your pelvis and your whole pelvic floor area into the rest of your body. So breathing into everywhere else, relaxing the body, right? Because when you're not relaxed, then the sexual energy just sort of gets clogged in the pelvis, and then it has nowhere else to go but out. Whereas when you relax, specifically like the glutes, the abs, the thighs, the hips, when you relax, then it allows the sensations to move up through your body. You might feel like tingling in your hands, buzzing in your head, and also expression. So moving your body, you might actually even like touch up your body. You might touch the rest of your upper body, your arms, your nipples, your head, and that actually brings the awareness and the sexual turn on into other parts. It sort of like brings everything online. And then also in that expression, sounding, like when you sound it, and I feel like we might have talked about this in the last episode, but when you sound, it gives that pleasure expression. And this is another thing that really helps to draw it from this like really localized, like into this like moving through the whole body. And it feels so different. So breathing, relaxing, expressing through movement, through touch, through sound, like really, it's almost like anything that you can think of that would feel like moving it through your body probably will help move it through your body, like moving, undulating, touching other parts of your body. Roaring for sure. Yeah. And then in terms of really like training for it, right? Practicing edging, bringing yourself close to orgasm and then backing away and doing this, you're actually expanding your capacity and you're building more of that sexual energy in your body. Doing sublimation practices where you're circulating the energy through your body using breath techniques, pelvic floor squeezing techniques. So there are all sorts of other tools that you can sort of implement in to build that. On top of just sort of the general ways while making love.
So you talked about semen retention in the last episode. I don't remember the number of the last episode, but everyone, if you just look up semen retention, I think it's the title of the episode with Fabienne. When we were speaking to people with penises who have full-bodied orgasms, is it generally in the process of not ejaculating and then they're having that like 5-minute or 15-minute or like what feels like 15 different orgasms over 15 minutes, but there's not ejaculation happening? Yeah. Is that what you're speaking to?
It can be, but also you can have a full-bodied orgasm that is also ejaculatory. But oftentimes, at least in my experience with working with men, it's been more so people who are practicing at least some level of semen retention. So they're not ejaculating as often as usual. And then they're sort of building more of that sexual energy and simultaneously doing practices to move it through the body. So it's not as much around this specifically ejaculating or not as it is building more of that sexual energy and allowing it to move through the body. Yeah, I would say any of these tools, breath, relaxation, this like sounding, edging, all of this can be used by anybody, actually. Like we're talking specifically about cock bearers right now, but really these are the tools for everybody. They're going to look a little bit different in the way that they're put into practice, but these are, I would say, like the tools for everybody.
The golden ticket, like Willy Wonka.
I've got to golden. I guess I have a terrible accent. I won't even try.
No, it's a lovely accent.
Through breath, expression, and relaxation.
This is true. I like that. It's interesting because growing up, everything was always, especially with sex, you were taught to tighten, tense, like tighten your pussy. And I don't know what for penis owners what they were taught, but time and time again, when we have experts on the show talking about these things, it's about relaxation and release. And so it's the opposite. And I still find myself tensing the fuck up when I'm like during sex. I'm like, why do I do? It's like conditional. So it's really cool because relaxing already sounds so nice anyway. So it's like, that's going to help me have full body orgasm. Hell yes. And
Totally.
I love that. And then breathing sounds so simple because we do it every day. However, there's just different ways to work the breath. So yeah, you're like, so don't hold that breath. It's
Totally.
incredible because you realize how often you were inhibiting yourself or holding that breath or tensing up when you start to realize you're doing the practices that will help you move into the direction of learning how to unlock the Rubik's Cube.
I have a question for both of you. If you've experienced this, for both of you, the two of you. For me, what I've discovered in the last year is my best orgasms are on my exhale. And not on my inhale or I can hold my breath and feel it like starting to build up, but I'm like, okay, orgasm's coming, it's coming. I hold my breath and deep inhale. And then when I exhale and then even holding my breath on the exhale can lead to this powerful orgasmic place. Do you ever experience that? Is that a thing?
Totally. And I love that you have that awareness. I love that you've like
took me a while. So 36 years to get there.
present.
No, I'm not aware at all. I'm like,
go try it tonight. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is that tensing can feel really good. Tensing can be really, really pleasurable. And it's more so like if you are wanting to tense your body, what I would recommend doing is like doing these little pulsations where the intention is really, okay, I can tense, but it's to almost like build and pump the energy rather than just like, I'm holding on for dear, or like trying to push over into something and actually like letting it happen. And it's exactly what you're saying about that, like orgasm on the exhale, where it's like the body almost like softens even more deeply. And in that softness, then it can move through the body in such a powerful way.
Yeah.
I'll try that tonight.
Try it, April. You got homework, girl.
Well, Fabienne, we love having you every single time I see you because you've only been on the show. This is the second time, but every time I get to hang out with you and see you, I just enjoy your presence because you're so incredible. So thank you for sharing today a little bit about this topic. How can people, if they want to learn more about you or they want to work with you, if they want to find you, what's your address and your social security number? And your credit score. Just kidding. How can they find Fabienne?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you both so much. It was just so fun to talk to both of you. I love you. And it's such a joy to get to chat about these things.
Love you too.
And yeah, so to find me, you can check out my website, which I believe you already said and is linked, fabienneannick.com. You can also find me on Instagram, which is at Fabienne Annick. And then how people can work with me. I do work with one-on-one clients in containers. I also am doing a sort of special one-off thing for people who really want to get back in touch with their sexual power. That's just like one extra long session where we really dive into that. And then I also have courses. So I have a course on sexual self-mastery. That's a 12-week course. I have a mini version of that's like a foundationals of sexual mastery. That's sort of a more self-paced, much smaller version to give you some tools. And then I also have a dating course of like how to actually do the thing in a way that feels really good and creates the kind of relationship we actually want.
No, we got to have you back on the show to talk about that one next time.
And you work with people anywhere in the world because it's all online, right?
I do work in person as well, but I live in a tiny town up in the mountains. So I mostly work online for sure.
Yeah, you're pretty remote. So, well, we love you, Fabienne. Thank you so much for sharing all of your amazing wisdom. And to all of you out there, you know the drill. I am going to invite you to give us 5 stars if you like the show and what we do on iTunes. And now on Spotify, you can also review us and rate us. And all that does is not only helps Amy and I just feel like we are changing the world one orgasm at a time, but it helps people find folks like Fabienne and helps people have more full-bodied orgasms and drop into that fucking Rubik's Cube solving. So go ahead and check us out. You can follow us on Instagram at Shameless Sex Podcast. And we got TikTok rocking too. And we do some funny shit on there, let me tell you. And that's at Shameless Sex. So check us out. And we love each and every one of you. We'll see you next Tuesday. Thank you for being part of the Shameless Sex Revolution. Ciao for now.